We finish our look at the fallacies of relevance, and particularly the category of the appeals to emotion among the fallacies of relevance, with one that's got an interesting Latin name, Advercundium. So Advercundium is literally an appeal to shame. Advercundium means to shame. And the sense is, the way we usually talk about this is it's false authority. Okay, false authority. And you say, well, what does that have to do with being ashamed? The fallacy is that we'll bring in some authority knowing that someone else may be ashamed to admit that they don't agree with that authority. Okay? Now, before we get into, there's actually 4 different versions of Advercundium. And before we get into those, I just want to say there are times when authority is appropriate, and it's as an appropriate reason to do something or believe something. For example, if your math teacher tells you that 2 + 2 = 4, that's a good enough reason, right? The math teacher is an expert in that field, and so you should believe that person. Same thing, if your coach tells you to do a particular thing in your sport, then do it, okay? Your coach knows what he or she is talking about. That person is an expert. We're talking about, as with all of these, the improper use of something to really, not exactly mislead, but to manipulate somebody into thinking something or believing something. And that's really a weak argument. So we're going to start off with a look at the version of Advercundium that we really separate and call the wrong or false authority. Okay, wrong or false authority. And we're going to take a little cartoon example. So here's the fellow in blue who says to his friend in green, he says, "Oh, go see John. He can fix you up. He's known for fixing things." And the fellow in green says, "But I have a broken arm. Isn't he a car mechanic?" Now, if you stop and think about that, citing this fellow John as the authority, or this is the person to go to, well, that's really irrelevant. That's why this is a fallacy of relevance here. Somebody might say, "Oh, well, okay, John's an expert. I'm kind of embarrassed to say I don't agree with that. I'll go to John." But in this case, that doesn't make any sense because while John can fix things, John's used to fixing cars, not people. So that's a good example of the false or wrong authority. Now, another version of Advercundium is what we call the biased expert. And for this, we need to take a trip to the 100-acre wood. So Owl and Piglet are having a conversation, and Owl says, "I say, how shall we decide whether honey should be its own food group?" And Piglet says, "Oh, let's ask Pooh. He knows all about honey." And there's Pooh Bear. He's got his honey pot up above him, and he says, "Oh, bother, empty again." Now, it's true that Pooh is an expert on honey, as anybody who's ever read the Winnie the Pooh stories knows. But that he would be a biased source, right? If you were trying to decide whether honey should be its own food group, you may not actually want to go to Pooh Bear, all right? You may want to go to a dietitian or a nutritionist, but not necessarily Winnie the Pooh, who, even though he knows a lot about honey, is really going to bring a biased perspective to the thinking. Now, another version of this Advercundium is what we call the unnamed expert. And for this one, I need to tell you a story. Years ago, I was teaching Latin class at a high school, and I had distributed the quiz to the students. I walked back to my desk and found a note on my desk, and I thought, well, that's odd. I'm pretty sure that note wasn't there just a moment ago. So while the students were taking their quiz, I opened the note and read it. And the note said, "I have contacted all of the other students in the class. We all agree you have done a very poor job teaching. You really need to do some things differently, blah, blah, blah," really taking me to task for my teaching style. And the note was unsigned. Okay? So the students got done with the quiz, passed the quiz in, and I said, oh, by the way, I said, I understand that all of you have been contacted by a member of this class asking you about my teaching style. And immediately I saw students' faces. They said, what are you talking about? I said, well, I've got a note here. It says that you have all been contacted. And they all just shrugged their shoulders and said, we have no idea what you are talking about. Now, eventually, I knew who the student was who'd written the note. And I spoke to her after class. And I pointed out that what she was doing, not only by not signing the note herself, but making this vague general statement, well, everybody else is saying this, but without naming names, here's what was said and when. That is really a passive-aggressive way of expressing yourself. It's not mature. You will hear it in the form of, well, you know, people are saying, really? What people? Who are the people? If you have something to say, you need to be able to own up to it. Okay? Put your name to it. Find a way to own what you say, because otherwise, if you're just making vague generalities, well, there are people out there who believe, that's an unnamed source, and that's really part of this fallacy of Advercundium. Now, another example of Advercundium is the celebrity example, the celebrity authority. And sometimes celebrities can be a perfectly good authority about something, but very often celebrities are used to advertise something that they really have no connection with. We've all seen this. And I want to give you an example involving the actor Brad Pitt. Now, first of all, here's an example of the kind of movies that Brad Pitt has done. He's done some big action movies. In fact, the example I'm going to show you, he plays Achilles in the movie Troy, which of course is based on Homer's Iliad.
You will wander the underworld blind, deaf, and dumb, and all the dead will know. This is Hector, the fool who thought he killed Achilles.
Now, here comes Brad Pitt, same character, same person, in a commercial.
It's not a journey. Every journey ends, but we go on. The world turns and we turn with it. Plans disappear. Dreams take over. But wherever I go, there you are. My luck, my fate, my fortune. Chanel number 5. Inevitable.
Now, that's a great example of the Advercundium celebrity expert fallacy. What on earth does the guy who played Achilles in the movie Troy really have to say about selling this particular perfume? Okay, at no point does he really say that he uses it, or anybody he knows uses it, or he can vouch for its wonderful scent. It's just the fact that his celebrity is supposed to make us want to buy it. Our last in the appeals to emotion fallacies involves the chronological snobbery. And for this, I'm just going to use a couple of books, okay? Chronological snobbery is an appeal to something as being better, either because it is really old or because it is really new. And so right here, I'm holding a couple of translations of Virgil's Aeneid, all right, the great epic Latin poem. This one was done in 1697 by John Dryden. This was done in 2008 by Sarah Rudin. And you will find people who say, oh, only the older is better, right? You should read Latin works and don't bother with modern English stuff. Or if it's going to be an English translation, it should be the older rather than the newer. At the same time, you're going to have people who say, forget about that old stuff. Who wants that old, outdated stuff? You want the new stuff. Only the new is really good. Now, at the end of the day, I will tell you, I use both of these translations, both for myself and with my students. They both have value. But their value doesn't rest on when they were written. Okay? That is the chronological snobbery and really is a fallacy of relevance.